Hello! Last time we were together, we had just started looking at a larger group of chords that we can use to harmonize our melodies. We have the 1, 1-6, 5, 5-6, 5-7, and 7-6 chords now. These should make our music a lot more interesting than the root position 1 and 5 we had been working with. Now, a nice skill to have when we're looking at music in a given key, for example the C major bass lines we have here, is being able to tell what chord we're working with just by looking at the bass note. So let's review the bass notes for these chords. The 1 chord, of course, has a bass note of C. 1-6, bass note is E. 5 chord, bass note is G. 5-6, B. 5-7, G. 7-6 is D. And you can review that and work that out for yourself on paper or in your head. So let's play around with these chords and see how they flow from one to another, and also practice a little bit in recognizing what chords we have just by looking at the bass line. So the first bass line we see there is Do, Ti, Do. And working with the set of chords above, we can see the only way to harmonize those notes is going to be 1, 5, 6, 1. And because we have this nice stepwise motion away from and back to the tonic, this tends to be a kind of a gentle, smooth arrival. The next 2 chords we have, just looking at the bass notes, we know that this is going to have to be 1 followed by 1-6. So it's the same 1 chord expressed in 2 different ways. Root position, first inversion. The next little pattern we have, the bass goes Do, Re, Mi. And so that progression is one that's right out of our idiom sheet from oral skills class, and we can see that has to be 1, 7-6, followed by 1-6. Bass line, and the whole progression sounds like that. So again, it's kind of a gentle move because of this stepwise bass motion. The final progression on this line is back to those root position chords we were working with in the last unit, and the only way we can harmonize this, given the chords we have, is like that, and it makes a very strong arrival with that falling fifth in the bass. So, what must this progression be? Well, given those bass notes, it'll have to be 1, 7-6, 5-6 to 1. And this progression, 1-6 to 5. Although the other chord with the bass note of G is 5-7, so we could make this a 5-7 chord and then on to 1. That makes a particularly strong arrival. There, that's 1-6, 5-7 to 1. Let's talk about the concept of expansion. Down here we have a 1 chord followed by a 1-6 chord. And a music theorist will tell you if a chord is followed by its own inversion, that chord is being expanded. The idea is the 1 harmony is in the background and it's sounding right through this measure. Even though the chord inversion changes, there's still the sound and the resonance of 1 in our ears. So it's all 1, even though it's moving 1 to 1-6. It's all expression of 1 harmony. even if we put a chord in between the 1 and the 1/6 chord, in music theory we can still consider this to be all an expansion of the 1 harmony. In other words, all of that is just simply embellishing or expanding the 1 chord. The concept is kind of... So I'm just holding the bass note of 1 through there to express that we hear this all as an expansion of 1. 1 to 5/6 to 1 can serve as just an elaborated 1 chord, as can 1/5/1. This isn't necessarily a cadence, this reposition 5 to 1, although a lot of cadences do go that way. Elsewhere in a phrase, this could end up sounding just like an expansion of 1 with a little in-between chord there, which doesn't really affect the harmony of the entire measure, which in the background would just be 1. One more term I want to introduce is voice exchange. You'll find this in your reading on page 132 to 146. And if we look at just the outer voices in this progression, you could say that the bass and soprano are trading notes. The soprano starts with E, but gives it to the bass, who end on E. And the bass starts with a C, which then appears as the last note in the soprano. So the bass has exchanged the C to the soprano and received the E that the soprano had. So it's just a normal progression we've actually used quite a bit already. Has a voice exchange in the outer voices. So they can crisscross through a 3-chord progression like that, or just simply going from a 1 chord to a 1/6 chord can be considered a voice exchange as well. So we would just indicate that with the little X or arrowheads if you like. Now let's get on to the worksheet that we had started doing in class last time I saw you. First thing on the sheet is just a review of the 6 chords we're using and putting in the blank the function of each chord. They're all either tonic or dominant functions. So the 1 chord we all agreed was tonic. The 5 chord was a dominant chord, 5/6 dominant, and so forth. I think we did that all in class, so just go ahead and fill that all in. Then number 2, play, listen to, and discuss the 6 chords. Mix up the orders, which combinations make stronger rivals, which are weaker, and that's what we just did on the other sheet of paper. Now, on the 2 systems below, write bass lines in quarter notes, and we'll just use note heads to match the chord progressions. Okay, so let's do a few of those. First one, C, 1-7-6-1-6. This is an old friend by now, so we'll write that in. We know that's Do, Re, Mi. 5/6 to 1 to 1/6. Those notes will have to be B. So we have a leading tone in the bass, and it's part of a dominant chord. So we know as an outer voice that leading tone has to resolve to 1, and that's what's given. And then 1 to 1/6, the expansion that we just went over. C to E. How about 1/6 to 5/6, 1 to 7/6? 1/6, 5/6 to 1. And then the 7/6 chord has a bass note of D. All right, and I will let you complete the rest of this. Now, add simple melody fragments that fit the harmonies. Use only chord tones. All right, and use the same rhythm as we have in the bass. So write mostly stepwise motion to make an outer voice structure with smooth lines. Good counterpoint with the bass. On the C major staff, try for mostly contrary motion. When you get down to the E minor staff, where you're going to write in bass notes that go with each of these chords, Don't forget to raise the leading tone in minor. Use much parallel motion when you write your little melodies. So we're doing melodic fragments to go with our bass fragments. When the bass line goes do, re, mi, we have this progression. I always like to use the voice exchange pattern. Makes things quicker. We don't have to think about it really at all. So I'm just going to go mi, re, do. If you're in a homework situation or test where you have limited time, we're not trying to necessarily be creative. We just want to write a soprano line that will work with the given bass line. The mi, re, do, 3, 2, 1 always goes well with a 1, 2, 3 bass line. Another soprano that could work would be do, ti, do. So if you like that, you could use that as well. How about a soprano fragment that would go with this bass line, and we'll try to emphasize contrary motion. All right, so from 5, 6 to 1, I'm going to start up here on a D, which is part of that 5, 6 chord, G, B, D, and come down by step in contrary motion to the C, which is part of the 1 chord. Then I could stay on the C to have oblique motion between these 2 chords. But just following the letter of the instructions, I think I'll have the soprano descend to the G, making completely contrary motion there. All right, next measure. Let's start our 1, 6 chord with C in the soprano. Now the bass goes down, so I want my soprano to go up. And then when the bass comes up, I'll have the soprano come back down. So we see we have nice contrary motion there. Actually, this is right out of one of your harmonic idioms as well. And when you have a contrary motion like this, it's almost impossible to have a voice leading error. So contrary motion is your friend. And then as we go up from the 1 to the 7, 6 chord, let's go down to the nearest chord member for our melody, which would be a B. So this is what these should look like, and I'd like you to just complete the rest of those 2 lines working that way. For exercises on this worksheet, remember we're not writing in 4-part SATB harmony. For the top half of the page, remember we're only writing in outer voices, soprano and bass. And now moving down to the lower part of the sheet here, we're only writing a bass line. So our instruction here is write brief, very simple bass lines, just note heads with RNFB to create the given motions in B flat major. Supply RNFB using only the 6 chords in this unit, see above. So the first thing we're asked to do is expand 1 with 1, 6. We just did that in C major, so I think we can quickly see. We'll start with the tonic chord, root position, do in the bass, move from do to mi, 1 to 3, and that represents 1 moving to 1, 6, and that is an expansion of 1 in B flat major. Sounds like this. The next thing we're asked is to start on 1, move away, and return by step. That's what our bass line should do. So start on 1 again. We could move away up by step or down by step. I'm going to choose down. So let's go down to the leading tone and then back up. And with that bass line, we know the chords have to be 1 and not 7, but 5, 6, and then back to 1. So this again is an expansion of B flat harmony. Sounds like this. And I'd like you to just go on and complete the rest of the worksheet that way.